Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to get your attention because we are going to commence our second day of the 11th ITB International Geothermal Workshop 2022. The microphone from all the attendees will be muted throughout the event. Honorable participants, stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Hope everyone is healthy and ready for today's event. I would like to welcome back you on this event. Yesterday was a great day and I hope the excitement and spirit will continue on today's event. I am Leticia Sucahyo, your host for today from ITB Geothermal Master Program. You are welcome to this event that is live from Bandung, Indonesia. This is the 11th ITB International Geothermal Workshop 2022. Title with the theme, Geothermal Competitiveness in Supporting Net Zero Emission from Technical to Business Model. Today's agenda will focus on geothermal competitiveness and opportunities. There will be 6 topics of 3 sections of discussion from interesting speakers. And this will be led by 3 moderators. Before we proceed to the session, we will inform you a few information about this event. We would like to invite the participant to tag our Instagram at Geothermal ITB 2008 with a photo of your activity during today's event. 2 of the participants will be rewarded, and the announcement of the winner will be shared at the end of this event. Don't forget to share the happiness on your photo as well. On reminding again, we are going to have 1 day left of this series of events that will be live until the 4th of August 2022. Don't miss it and stay tuned with us. Only selected presentation videos will be published gradually, so stay tuned and check our YouTube channel, Geothermal ITB. There will be an attendance form in the chat box that must be filled each day for all participants. So make sure to check your chat box until the end of the event. Without any further ado, let me introduce our moderators for today's session. The first session will be led by Mr. Angga Bakti Pratama. Second session will be guided by Mr. Alfend Rudyawan. And then we will have Mr. Dimas Taha Maulana for the last session. They all lecture at Institut Teknologi Bandung. Hello, good afternoon Mr. Pratama, Mr. Rudyawan, and Mr. Maulana. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. Pratama, Mr. Rudyawan, and Mr. Maulana. We are glad to hear that. Before we proceed to the session, we would like to invite Dr. Suryantini, Bapak Abadi Purnomo as our advisory board, Bapak Sutopo as steering committee of ITB Geothermal Workshop 2022, and all of our moderators to turn on the camera for the photo session. I'd like to invite Dr. Suryantini, Bapak Abadi Purnomo, and Bapak Sutopo, and all of our moderators to turn on the camera for a photo session. Hello everyone, we may begin in 3, 2, 1. Cheers! Thank you. Now I will read brief CVs about our moderators. Mr. Angga Bakti Pratama is a professional in geophysics at Geothermal Master Program. He earned his master degree in Geothermal Master Program. Mr. Alfend Rudyawan earned a doctorate degree in Geological and Earth Science at University of London. He is a professional in geology at Geological Engineering. Mr. Dimas Taha Maulana is a professional researcher in drilling and production engineering at Geothermal Master Program. He also earned his master degree in Geothermal Master Program. So, let's begin our first session for today. Mr. Pratama, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, MC, for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Angga, and I will lead today's first plenary session. So, for today's first session, we will have two different presenters. The first presenter is Ms. Zuza from Horne Technology, and second presenter will be Mr. Hariyanto from the Ministry of Energy and Resources. So, how are you, Miss Robin Zuza, and also Pak Hariyanto?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay,
I'm
before
fine,
we start,
thank you.
okay, thank you, Ms. Robin Zuza and also Pak Hariyanto. I think before we start, I would like to invite Ms. Zuza and also Pak Hariyanto and also Ibu Ninik and Pak Abadi Purnomo to turn on the camera and have a photo session first. Okay, I think the cue on me. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, before we start, I would like to tell all of you that we will have a Q&A session. So after each presentation, we will have a question and answer session. So to ask a question, the audience may use Q&A feature in Zoom or write your question in YouTube comment section. So the question should be in this following format. First, name underscore affiliation underscore question. So due to the time limitation, we will select first question and continue to the remaining if the time is adequate. Okay, so let's start with the first session. Ms. Robin Souza will deliver the proven strategies or math expertise in low temperature geothermal development. Ms. Robin Souza is graduated from University of California in geological engineering and hold master degree in geology, also from University of California. Ms. Souza have some working experience in some different company. In 2013, start working at Occidental Petroleum Corporation USA until 2014, and in 2014 until 2016 became the staff exploration geologist at California Resources Corporation USA, and in 2016 start her career at Ormat as staff geologist until become the geothermal exploration manager, and before in 2022 become the director of global exploration of Ormat Technologies Incorporation. So I think without further ado, please welcome Ms. Ruby and Zuza.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. As you gave a great introduction, I'll skip that and go right into the discussion. Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'll be talking about smart business strategy to develop low to medium enthalpy. Ormat Technologies is a publicly traded company, so there is a little bit of formality. I will be making some forward-looking statements, so just keep that into consideration. This is our safe harbor statement and non-GAAP metrics. So here's the agenda for my talk. First, I'll introduce Ormat and what our experience is in developing low to medium enthalpy systems. And then I'll talk about where those opportunities are globally. Then I'll get into exploration and development strategies. So first discussing fit for purpose exploration specific to those types of systems, as well as some of our lessons and strategies for development. So Ormat is a leading renewable energy provider. We have a proven track record in geothermal growth. We currently own and operate over 1 gigawatt of both geothermal, solar energy storage, and REG. What makes us unique is that we are vertically integrated, which means that we can take a project all the way from the beginning of greenfield exploration or frontier grassroots exploration through development, manufacturing, construction, and operation. So we have a very high world-class team. We own a fleet of drilling rigs, and we can kind of do every stage of the project and have the in-house expertise to do so. We are global leaders in geothermal. Right now, we have geothermal assets in 6 different countries, and our portfolio for specifically geothermal is 995 megawatts right now. We are a growing company. We are actively exploring and developing resources across the globe outside of what we have as operating assets and partnerships. And what's interesting is that because we are global, we explore and develop in a number of various types of geothermal resources in terms of temperature, geologic setting, and challenges. We're able to leverage that to be able to understand how to explore for any types of geothermal system, taking lessons applied from our current operating fleet and all of our active exploration. As I mentioned before, we're a growth company and we are trying to actively explore, and we're definitely interested and focused in growing in Indonesia. And our expertise in low to medium enthalpy or lower temperature systems has us strategically poised to see some of the low-hanging fruit and apply some of our lessons from development in other areas across the globe to Indonesia. Another thing about Ormat, specific to low temperature systems, is that we are experts in geothermal pumps. Here is our operating well fleet, and you can see we have a large number of wells, with the majority of them being pumped wells. And our expertise is both in line shaft pumps, but also ESPs. And we are looking to, see the industry as a whole develop more use for ESPs in different applications. We have a historic track record of growth. This is our, plot through time of our geothermal portfolio. Our growth has occurred organically, meaning we take new projects from the very beginning all the way through to operation, but also with strategic acquisitions and expansions both of acquired projects as well as projects that we explored for initially. And on top of that, we've had a number of repowers, which is basically taking the latest technology in binary power plants and adding it to systems or power plants that have been outdated to increase generation and output without having to increase the resource. We're currently involved in 25 operational geothermal reservoirs and actively operating 23 of those. So it's a pretty substantial portfolio. As I mentioned, we're very interested and we're very active in Indonesia. So here's kind of a snapshot of what we're involved in to date. We have a number of projects and different developments, all the way from the earliest stage of development, exploration, drilling, as well as operation, where we do have 2 partnerships within Indonesia, and we're hoping to see this grow. And I believe my colleague will speak more to this tomorrow in another session. Okay, so now that you've had some introduction to Ormat, let's get into low to medium temperature geothermal systems. This slide is kind of a way to distinguish between different types of geologic settings that you can, put geothermal systems across the world into these different buckets. You could probably slice and dice it a number of different ways, but here's one of them. So we have basinal systems, volcanic systems, waning volcanic systems, and sedimentary basins. And what we're highlighting here is where you can find opportunities for low to medium temperature systems. And we're classifying those in this slide as 220 degrees Celsius or lower. And that's shown by the yellow circle and where you find it in these schematics of these different types of settings or characters for geothermal systems. The high temperature systems are shown in the red circle. So you can see in each different area, there's always an opportunity for low temperature systems and something to consider. We have a lot of projects in the Western US, and a lot of those are, volcanic, sedimentary, but mostly basinal systems where you have most of the time a discrete upflow and an outflow into a basin. And we have a lot of robust systems that produce directly from the outflow. And an example of that would be Mammoth in California, as well as Steamboat. And these are systems that have been published and are classic examples of great resources that are producing solely from the outflow or from both and managed as one resource. But additionally, all of these systems have outflows that should not be ignored as low temperature opportunities. And of course, upflow in the majority of these areas can be also low to high temperature systems. And of course, Indonesia is poised with a lot of different tectonic or geologic settings and different terrains where we can see both basinal settings as well as volcanic and waning volcanic systems. So here's a global view. This space map was taken, I think, from Think Geoenergy, and it shows the geothermal areas across the world. And highlighted here with the black arrows are regions where there have been geothermal reservoirs developed for power generation less than 210 degrees Celsius, so considered low to medium temperature systems. The majority of systems have been developed in the Western US and basin range setting. And additionally, of course, Turkey or the Aegean Western Anatolian extensional province, where they have low to moderate temperature systems, and most of those aren't pumped because they have high enough gas content to have natural lift. Where we see expansion in low temperature opportunities has been in Central America, and specifically with ORMAT as well. And then smaller developments have occurred across the whole global scale. For example, Europe, where there have been some smaller deep plays and sedimentary basins. But we see opportunity everywhere, including Indonesia. And I'll also mention, of course, the East African Rift, where there is some low-hanging fruit for low to medium temperature systems. So moving into exploring for these type of opportunities, I'm calling this fit for purpose exploration, meaning that we want to have an exploration program that's fit to what you're exploring for, and specifically lower temperature systems. Now, in any case, high or low, we want to have multiple conceptual models that are continuously working throughout the exploration stage, and that those conceptual models are supported by global analogs. Both geological and geophysical surveys are as needed based on the conceptual model. I'll pause and say that we really want to invest appropriately with the right geophysical method, depending on the conceptual model of the system. And we really want to avoid, and this is how we've done it, checking the box for all of the classical geophysical surveys and making sure that you're considering what stage of exploration that you're in. Costly geophysical surveys and checking boxes for anomaly stacking, it does not directly lead to a good exploration program, but making sure that you're managing your investments, especially with a portfolio approach, is important for low temperature systems. Not all projects will be successful, so we want to prepare for failures and making sure that we're considering how we're investing our money wisely. For most exploration projects, I think small diameter drilling, including temperature gradient wells, slim wells, or core wells, or a mix of the two or three, are a great strategy to reduce walkaway costs and help de-risk full-size drilling, as well as understand project viability. And additionally, we found that for specifically low temperature systems, collecting image logs can be very easy and extremely valuable in characterizing the resource in terms of understanding the fracture and the geologic model early on. So investing in image logs is critical for most geothermal systems, but also very easy for low to moderate temperatures. Focus on injection targets early, specifically in the exploration stage. So don't ignore that. Don't focus specifically on finding the upflow and temperature and think that you have kind of a solution for, a design point or developing a system. We need to understand, where are the injection targets going to be and what is the configuration going to be early on in especially a low to medium temperature system. And as I already discussed with you, don't ignore low temperature outflow opportunities. So within exploration, of course, I already mentioned geophysics, so I'm just going to talk to that point a little bit more. With each type of system and geologic study that I mentioned earlier, here's a list of some geophysics as well as some drilling techniques and how they can be useful. I won't go through each one of these, but of course, resistivity or MT surveys is kind of the classic geophysical technique used to understand geothermal reservoirs. And in high enthalpy systems, it is very critical to understand the top of the reservoir through alteration, of course, what type of fluids you're dealing with. Now, an example of how that could be used differently in low to medium temperature systems is that MT is very useful to define the structure. So understanding where your fractures are that are controlling upflow, or at least understanding what your geologic model is so you can inform your conceptual model and your exploration program. Resistivity can also define shallow densification associated with the outflow of a system. Now, another example is gravity. Gravity in how we've seen it used in how we use it in basin and range in low temperature systems in the Western US is extremely valuable. It can give us also more confidence on the structures and the structural model, because you can really map out offsets along large contrast between basin fill against basin fill against basements. And it's critical to understand what you're trying to image when you're taking these types of surveys, but it's very useful. However, where you're in a situation where you don't expect to have a contrast and density across structures, or you don't expect large offset, gravity isn't useful. So we really do use each of these on a case-by-case basis and making sure that we're informing ourselves through conceptual modeling and smart investments. One other area I will note is in sedimentary basins. We've performed a number of active seismic surveys, both 2D and 3D. And these, again, help us define the structure, which is really important in the conceptual model. But they've also helped identify, in some cases, the upflow through mineralization and the way that that looks in the seismic profile. So here's an example, because I was talking about resistivity as an example of how different you can explore for high enthalpy versus low enthalpy systems. In this cross section, you're seeing a conceptual model of a classic Nevada basin and range system where you have a range front fault that's down dropping some of that, what's colored there kind of as yellow, the alluvium basin, basin fill juxtaposed against basement rocks, in this case, Jurassic metasediments. And the resistivity is shown there, and you can see the highly resistive feature really well delineates the basin fill. And in this case, it helped inform the structural model, which then helped us appropriately model some of our fracture targets. One thing I do want to mention too is in basinal systems, they tend to be very 2D or 3D, which means that they change, in structure in a complex manner along strike. And three-dimensional inversions in MT is definitely a worthwhile investment, at least how we've seen it. Here's a concept of temperature gradient wells and how valuable they can be to vector in or to point you in the direction of upflow, especially in low temperature systems, maybe where the upflow is, discretely along a couple fracture networks and not distributed across a wider zone. It's a schematic, and you can really see how temperature gradient wells test conceptual models to de-risk full-size drilling and increase the confidence in project viability. And of course, this can give you confidence prior to investing more. Now, temperature gradient wells can be in a lot of different forms in terms of core wells or slim wells, and it just depends on what type of system you're working in and what type of conceptual model that you're working on. So they can be a range of depths. This is an example where it looks relatively shallow, but we have a couple of operating fields where at the top of the geothermal reservoir and the outflow is very deep, up to 2,000 meters, and therefore what constitutes a TG well, could be relatively deep. It's not always a shallow well. All right, so those were some topics on exploration. Next, I'm going to move on to developments. With low to medium temperature resources, you want to plan for pumps, and you want to incorporate that into your well designs early. So once you have a sense for the resource, when you're planning wells, if you think that they're going to be, it's worthwhile to invest in full-size wells, you want to consider what pump you're going to put in them and what depth and what is your range of expected outcomes. And that way you can make sure the casing design matches what you actually want to pump out of the well. Long-term tests are critical to de-risking the long-term operation of a power plant. So you kind of want to de-risk that 30-year contract early on in the phase of development by stressing the reservoir, measuring long-term well performance, and testing injection configuration. Now, the long-term test leads into calibrating a well-informed numerical model, and that numerical model should be supported by the working conceptual model. Now, another kind of nuance for what ORMAT's done with all of our resources, with a few resources, has been phased developments, basically starting with a lower operational set point and then building from there. And this reduces the risk of overdevelopment and maximizing the resource. And really what we do is we match the resource over time with the generation capacity. And we don't come in just assuming a blanket generation capacity and try to meet the resource to that. Here's an example of one of our successes of phased developments. This is McGinnis Hills, located in Nevada. This project has had 3 main stages of development with a couple smaller ones as well. And when the project was first developed in 2012, it was just under 40 megawatts, and now it's operating, has an installed capacity, of 160 megawatts. And so when it first came online, there was actually still 2 kind of competing conceptual models about how the major faults for production and injection linked at depth and where the injection pathways would be. But after a year of operation, that was basically a second long-term test. We were able to calibrate the numerical model, of course, with tracer and monitoring wells, and give confidence that we could lead into another expansion. And again, we're just trying to de-risk, over producing the resource and matching the resource to the facility at the surface. As I mentioned earlier, plan for production pumps with medium to low enthalpy systems, and this gives a lot of benefit. Pumps significantly increase well outputs, and they're very flexible in terms of their operating parameters, and they're very flexible to react to reservoir conditions. So you could have, some sort of decline in pressure, but you can maintain well output. Of course, keeping the fluid single phase does a lot for preventing well scaling. And it really simplifies the plant process by removing the need for, separation, as well as, reducing or basically negating the need for NCG emissions, which is really big, of course. And then additionally, with a single phase fluid and a pumped well, with all the monitoring aspects of it, you can really understand the well performance, at a very high resolution. You can see the temperature change through time, the pressure change through time. Now, along with low temperature to medium temperature systems, binary power plants are very important. Binary is a technology that's grown quite a bit, not just with low to medium temperature systems, but that's kind of where it's got its start. You can have a 2-phase binary geothermal power plant as well as a single phase. Now, what is somewhat ubiquitous to low temperature systems is 100% reinjection, which is beneficial to support the resource and reduce visual impacts. There's no plume. No energy consumption for disposals of NCGs, and basically can prevent NCG emissions. Binary power plants are modular, and they fit very well with our phased development strategy, meaning you can design the facility to meet the resource, and then as you expand, you can basically build on top of it very simply and very economically with binary technology. There's a wide range of megawatt capacity per unit, and there's no contact between the geothermal fluid and the binary turbine components, which really simplifies maintenance. And of course, it had mentioned already, it has high flexibility in terms of resource changes. So one power plant, can fluctuate quite a bit through the life of the project if there's any changes in the resource without having to do upgrades. Now, with binary power plants and different types of geothermal systems, it is important to note that the lower the temperature you go, the more flow is needed for the same amount of megawatts. So basically, here's a plot of resource temperature with flow per gross megawatt. And so you can see on the lower end, you have to produce a lot more fluid, and at the higher end, you can, of course, produce less. So you have to keep that in mind early in exploration and development strategies, and finding high permeability is critical. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, considering injection in the exploration activities is really important because you need to have ample injection capacity to meet the demands of a lower temperature resource.
Sorry, Robin.
Yes.
I think there's still 2 more minutes, I think, for your presentation.
2 more minutes?
Yeah.
That's perfect. Key takeaways.
Okay.
So I'll go through this quickly. I think I have one more slide after this, but low temperature, developments, and I hope we've shown that we've had a lot of successes in ORMAT in developing these, and globally there are a lot of opportunities, and there's opportunities in Indonesia. Consider outflow and upflow for low to medium temperature. Exploration should be driven by conceptual models. We really want to invest appropriately and not just check boxes and not just do anomaly stacking, which I think is a concept that's out there, but still we don't want to do a blanket exploration program for every resource. The combination of well pumps and binary technology is hugely enabling. We went through that in detail. And I hope that you took away that the stage developments really helps achieve more megawatts overall and faster with reducing the risk. I'll leave you with some brainstorming thoughts on how we can increase development in Indonesia specifically, and I'll highlight a few of these relatively quickly. Of course, certainty on PPAs with reasonable conditions and rates, but again, to reduce the risk of overall exploration, to accelerate growth, using a portfolio approach is something that ORMAT has done very successfully in a couple other countries, meaning that we can explore for multiple projects at one time, knowing that we can fulfill one contract PPA. And a tax master list can work very similarly and reduce the burden of having to purchase for one project and instead using a portfolio approach. Obtaining more relevant data and making it more accessible and making it in a raw format is very useful. And I did skip over, I want to mention enhancing regulations to assist early stage exploration, which means, making it easy to do those temperature gradient core or slim well drilling wells early on, such that we can put more of our efforts, more of our investment in projects that have the viability to go into operational conditions. So I'll let you read the rest of those, and we can always ask questions in the next session. I appreciate your time, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Zuza, for the stimulating presentation. I think regarding the medium to low temperature geothermal development, we know that Indonesia has so many potential in this medium to low geothermal temperature geothermal system, actually. So yeah, we could learn maybe from ORMAT experience. Okay, now we will open the Q&A session. I think I would like to ask committee for help or for assist to show the question from the audience. Okay, the first question, Ms. Zuza, from Mayandari from the National Research and Innovation Agency. So how do you build a smart strategy and synergy with local government in de-risking the upcoming or ongoing projects? Please, your response.
Well, there's a couple of different ways to answer that. I think what I'll focus on is, educating in low temperature systems in general, because we don't have any developed projects yet in Indonesia. There still is some education, at least so I've seen, in terms of, the difference in well testing, the difference in exploration in terms of, again, fit for purpose exploration techniques and geophysical methods. So being really open and hopefully having a good relationship to be able to describe kind of the difference and how to be flexible in exploring for low temperature geothermal systems. Additionally, I discussed, hopefully making it easier through the regulatory process to have flexibility on more permits available, such that we can have a portfolio approach to exploration. So not all projects will be successful. So you don't want to have one project only. You want to diversify your portfolio. And so I think working with the regulators to improve the number of permits available for independent operators would be a good relationship.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think one more question to the time. I think we still have one question. Yeah, from Dimas ITB. Thank you, Ms. Zuza. That was exciting sharing. I have a brief question regarding resources calculation. At conventional hydrothermal, we calculate the resources using the final temperature assumption, considering the minimum conventional turbine pressure. What about resource calculation if we utilize binary?
So hopefully I answer this correctly by just interpreting kind of what the question is. I think you're asking kind of like how to understand what the resource could be by understanding the temperature. Is that correct?
Yeah, final temperature, if we use maybe a volumetric, here we use the final temperature assumption.
Yeah. So again, it's in the early stages of exploration for any resource, you want to have kind of a range of potential outcomes based on the data. And as you continue to explore for a resource, that range of outcomes should be narrower and narrower. And you can do that through volumetric assessments as well as probabilistic assessments associated with analogs. So I think the answer to that would be, what we've seen is really having a global analog view and understanding where in the world we can kind of see where has this type of resource been developed before can also be really helpful in understanding what the resource outputs could be. And that's kind of in the early stage of exploration. So I hope I answered that question correctly, and you can always chat me if I can elaborate more on that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Zuza, for the answer. I think Ms. Zuza could answer if there is still any question. I think Ms. Zuza could answer in the Q&A box, but I think this is because the limitation of the time. I think we are very sorry that not all the question. I think is there still okay. One more question, I think, from the committee. Okay, from Angelia ITB. How detailed that need to be done for geology survey? Because geology interpretation very important on conceptual model and geophysics.
In terms of, now I see the question, that's pretty great. So in terms of geological survey, thinking about geologic mapping, field reconnaissance, sampling, it is very critical. So it's extremely important, and I think it's a really low cost option. So more boots on the ground early in the phase and throughout the entire exploration and development is really critical to inform the conceptual model. So I would agree with that, and I would say that the geological survey is very important.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Zuza, for the knowledge that you have shared today. So the committee will give you a memento, virtual memento, as a token of appreciation. And I think the committee will contact you regarding the shipping address. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Zuza.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay. Before we continue, we will have a short break, and after this, we'll be back with the second presenter. Please don't go anywhere.
Indonesia merupakan salah satu negara yang memiliki potensi energi panas bumi terbesar di dunia. Saat ini, Indonesia menduduki peringkat 2 dunia sebagai negara penghasil listrik dari energi panas bumi. Selain sebagai energi yang bersih dan berkelanjutan, peran energi panas bumi sebagai baseload penyediaan listrik menjadi pertimbangan utama agar pengembangannya diprioritaskan. Oleh karena itu, dalam menjaga ketahanan energi suatu negara, energi panas bumi dapat menjadi andalan untuk memasok listrik guna memenuhi target bauran energi 23% EBB di tahun 2025 sesuai dengan amanat dari Kebijakan Energi Nasional. Untuk memenuhi pencapaian target EBB dalam bauran energi tersebut, Indonesia layak melakukan percepatan pembangunan proyek PLTP di Indonesia. PT Geodipa Energi Persero adalah perusahaan yang bergerak di bidang energi panas bumi, mulai dari eksplorasi hingga eksploitasi. Pada tahun 2011, melalui Peraturan Pemerintah Nomor 62 Tahun 2011, Geodipa ditetapkan sebagai persero yang pengawasan dan pembinaannya berada di bawah Kementerian Keuangan dan PT PLN Persero, yang juga merupakan salah satu Special Mission Vehicle atau SMV di bawah Kementerian Keuangan dengan misi mendukung program pemerintah dalam penyediaan listrik tenaga panas bumi yang aman dan ramah lingkungan, serta memberikan manfaat besar pada Indonesia. Geodipa siap untuk melanjutkan pengembangan proyek PLTP di Taha yang masuk dalam Fast Track Program atau FTP tahap 2 10.000 MW. Bagian dari program 35.000 MW yang merupakan program pemerintah di bidang pembangunan infrastruktur ketenagalistrikan. Saat ini, Geodipa menerima penugasan dari pemerintah untuk mengelola 4 wilayah kerja panas bumi. WKP DTT Dieng, WKP Area Patuha, WKP Arjuno Welirang, dan WKP Candi Umbul Telemoyo. Geodipa.
Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now we will start the second presentation from Mr. Hariyanto. Pak Hariyanto will explain the government drilling update, and Pak Hariyanto is the head of Center for Mineral, Coal, and Geothermal Resources. Pak Hariyanto graduated from Chemical Engineering from Institute Technology School in November in 1994 and acquired his Master in Mechanical Engineering from University Indonesia and holds doctorate degree in Chemical Engineering from Technical University of Munich, Germany in 2008. So Pak Hariyanto have some working experience in 2010 until 2015 as the head of subsector instrument engineering and calibration, in 2015 until 2016 as the head of energy efficiency, and 2016 until 2018 as the head of energy conservation for assessment and application of Technology Agency Indonesia. Since 2018, started working at Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources Indonesia as a Director of Energy Conservation until 2020 and become the head of Center for Mineral, Coal, and Geothermal Resources. Okay, Pak Hariyanto, I think the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Pak Angga. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, thank you for being invited to this event. And let me read introduction myself. That I'm working for Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources in Geotermal Agency, as Pak Moderator introduced. And today discussion, I would like to present the latest status of Indonesia government drilling update that we feel is great important to be discussed for today's occasions. Well, Indonesia at the present time, we have 63 geothermal working area, or known as WKP, and 15 geothermal assignment for preliminary survey and exploration, or known as SPE, that expecting providing contribution toward increasing electricity installed capacity for reaching the target appropriate for geothermal roadmap. And the last assignment in 2022 is given to Cipanas Geothermal Working Area. It is in Gede Pangrango, west of Java, by government. And government through Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources perform the geothermal exploration program by government or government drilling that intend to reduce upstream exploration risk as an improvement to acceleration of geothermal developing in Indonesia. It is conducted by complementing geoscience data, infrastructure, and exploration drilling in 2021, and also exploration drilling in 20 selected area. Ladies and gentlemen, next please. And here is the 20 selected geothermal prospect area in geothermal drilling plan. You can see in these tables. This is 20 selected geothermal area, which is distributed in Sumatera, Java, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Bali, Flores, Lombok, to Seram Island in Maluku. And in 2021, Geological Agency through PSDMPP, our center, has conducted additional activities for geoscience data in its locations, and slim hole drilling in 2 locations as shown in this figure. You can see in this map 2 locations of our slim hole drilling in 2021. This is Cisolo Sukarame and also the Nage area. And the next is the location of slim hole well in Nage area. It is in East Nusa Tenggara. You can see in this map that the following is the location map of geothermal slim hole in Nage, in Nusa Tenggara Timur. Drilling has been done in 2 points, which is NGE 1 and NGE 2 with depth target at 1,500 meters. This is straight holes. And next, please. This is the construction of the Nage 1's area, or NGE 0.1E area. That's this is reached the final depth target at 1,500 meters with drilling result full continuous coring and PT lodging measurement and completion test as well. This is for Nage 0.1 area. And what about the composite log of the Nage area? You can see in this slide the description of a result of the core sampling of NGE 0.1E locations that's dominated by volcano rocks such as breccia, tufa, and also andesite lava. And next is, according to the alteration mineral, have medium to high intensity that form in propylitic zone. And it is characterized by the presence of chloride and epidot mineral start from around 759 meters depths to the final depths. This is a composite log of NGA 0.1E area in Nage. And what the next is about the result of temperature and pressure logging in Nage area. That the temperature pressure logging results show the maximum temperature to 249.12 degree C and maximum pressure in 1,793 PSI. And if the temperature of a Nage 0.1 E area well corrected by owner plot, will reach of about 267.9 degrees C. This is the data of the Nage area slim hole drilling. And what about the completion test result for the Nage area? This is shown the result for completion test. Next, please. And so far, this is the pretty promising result of the completion test result of Nage 0.1 E location. That completion test, as you can see in the table, conducted in 3-time measurement in June 2022. This is the summary of the result of completion test in Nage 0.1 E area. And next, please, we want to provide the data of Nage 0.2 area. And this in Nage 0.2 well construction, this is reach target of 600 meters final depth with the drilling result, full continuous coring and PT lodging measurement. This is the Nage area 0.2. And next, about the composite log of Nage 0.2, this description result of Horne at Nage 0.2 area were dominated by volcanic rock such as breccia, tufa, andesite, and also basalt. Alteration minerals have medium intensity that form at propylitic zone and characterized by chloride and epidot start at 489 meter depths. And in Nage 0.2, area, with its comparable result with Nage 1.1 area, the result of the PT lodging show maximum temperature is 137.6 degrees C at maximum pressure 758 PSI. This is the data of the Nage 0.2 area. And the next is model conception or conceptual model that's made according to the 3G survey data result and slim hole drilling. The result of additional drilling data show that the upflow zone of Nage geothermal system underneath NGA 1E and NGA 2 well with temperature more than 284 degrees C. So now I will come up with the resume of the drilling in Nage. One is the Nage geothermal area has geothermal system associated with quaternary volcanic activity with reservoir temperature higher than 284 degrees C, and the top reservoir is at the depth of about 800 meters. Second, based on the completeness of geoscientific data, slim hole, and technical evaluation result, the Nage geothermal area is visible to be offered to geothermal developer or business entities. This is our resume for the Nage area.
Sorry, Pak
So-
Hariyanto. We have 3 minutes left for your presentation.
Okay, I will speed up. Thank you, Pak Angga. Okay, the next is the following location of the slim hole drilling point in Cisolo. This is area in Sukabumi district, Sukabumi Regency, west of Java. Drilling was executed at the one point and with depth the target of 2,000 meters. This is right hole. And the slim hole drilling of Cisolo area point one did not reach the final depth target 2,000 meters due to the hole problem that couldn't be solved. That the total depth reached was 821 meters. This is the result of government slim hole drilling in Cisolo area. So we should please jump to the page number 24, please. So next, okay, I will resume our talk in drilling Cisolo area. One is the Cisolo Cisukarame geothermal system is associated with the quaternary volcanic activity from Halimun with reservoir temperature between 170 to 235 degrees C based on the geoscience data. And second is slim hole drilling has been conducted until 821 millimeter meter depth and still on the cap rock layer. And third is the result of drilling CKK or Cisolo area number 1 is issued to be revised model tentative geothermal but couldn't affected to change resource estimation. This is the summary of the drilling of Cisolo. And then I want to summarize of all of the talk today. Let me now summarize with the status of the geothermal government drilling of 2 area of drilling. Next, okay. One is geothermal exploration program by government conducted in 2021 has completed geothermal slim hole drilling in 2 locations, it is Nage and Cisolo. It is obtained measure temperature and pressure and also subsurface lithology in Nage and Cisolo. Second is geothermal drilling by government can effectively reduce the exploration risk of social issues, infrastructure, and geoscience for developer. And the government drilling also provide actual geoscience data required in planning and accelerating the auction process. And the last is geothermal exploration by government could increase the competitiveness of electricity price of geothermal and provide benefit for either local or national economy, employment, and also state revenue. I think this is all of my talk. Thank you for your attention. I will return the time to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Hariyanto, for interesting presentation regarding the update of government drilling in Nage and also Cisolok Sukarame. Okay, now I will open the Q&A session. Okay, the first question is from Tani, ITB. For the area that has been drilled by this government drilling program, when will be ready to be offered for PSP or PSPA bidding? Would you respond it, Pak Hariyanto?
Okay, thank you. This is nice question, Pak Angga, from about the
Sorry, Pak Hari.
sorry, this is mute. Sorry. Thank you for nice question. I want to respond this question regarding to the slim hole data in Nake area and Cisolo. We already report the result to the Directorate General IBTKI or New and Renewable Energy. That the data is enough for us that the Nake area can be next process to the what we call the WKP or the PSPE, because from the technical data, the result from especially for the Nake is quite good to be continue to next processes. What about the Cisolo area? I think it is still need to explore more the data of the Cisolo, and we still in the process to continue the drilling in the Cisolo area. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Pak Hariyanto, for the answer. We are very sorry that due to the time limitation, I think there's only one question to be open in this Q&A session. But I hope Pak Hariyanto and team do not mind to answer the question and answer in the question and answer box from the audience, if Pak Hariyanto and the team don't mind. Okay, thank you very much, Pak Hariyanto, for the presentation. Because the committee will give you a memento, virtual memento, as a token of our appreciation. So the committee will contact you regarding the shipping address. I think that's conclude our first session today. So after this, I think Pak Alfend Rudyawan will guide you throughout the second session of today's event. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much, Pak Hariyanto, and also Ms. Zuza for the presentation and participation. Don't go anywhere. We will be back after the commercial break.
Hello, welcome back to the second sessions of the IIGW 2022. My name is Alfend. Thank you very much, Mas Angga, for kind introductions for the second sessions. We would like to start the second sessions of today. The topics still in geothermal competitiveness and opportunities. We have two lecturers or speakers that will bring their experience today. The first one will be Professor Roland Horne from Stanford University, and then I can see that Professor Roland Horne is already here. The second one will be Mr. Pak Daroyni. Would you please turn on the camera? Okay, now looking good, everybody, looking good. But Roland, I got the information that you've been to Indonesia a couple of times, Professor Roland Horne. So I think you're already familiar with Pak. So I'm gonna use Pak Roland and Pak Daroyni. So I'm gonna take the liberty to take the pictures of three of us. I think if you could smile to the camera, Bu Ninik as well, and then Pak. Another one should be in frame. So thank you very much at the Buneni. Cue on me. Everyone smile to the camera, please. 3, 2, 1. That's it. Brilliant. Thank you very much for the smile to start the second session for today. The first up is Professor Roland Horne. I got the information that Professor Roland already prepared a slide for us in video format, so that we will try to play his materials from our areas here at ITB. Professor Roland Horne is a lecturer at Stanford University. He got his degree from university, the bachelor degree from University of Auckland in New Zealand, and subsequently taking engineering science, and two doctors, of one in engineering science and science and engineering from the same university, University of Auckland in New Zealand. So Professor Roland Horne, or the presentations will be up for. I was surprised there was a memento just now. They'll be kept until the presentations have been carried out. But the presentation will last for 20 to 20 minutes maximum. And then there will be a Q&A sessions at the end of the presentations, if time permitting. And should there will be a questions from the audience, you should put it on the Q&A box there. You could just put your name, institutions, and then followed by your questions. And from people who are watching on YouTube, you should use the following format: so your name, your institutions, the questions, to put that in there, and then we try to our best to fit in within the time frame. Then I would like to invite the Professor Roland Horne, or the materials to be presented, and the time is for Professor Roland Horne. Please.
Okay, so thank you very much for attending my talk. This won't be a video, but speaking in person. You should be able to see my slides now.
It is clear now.
Very good. So I'm here to talk to you today about renewable energy, or geothermal energy in California, which happens to be a particular kind of grid. And I want to talk about how that affects the way that we use geothermal in the state of California. So, as you know, worldwide, geothermal has been expanding steadily throughout the last 50 years. And if we look at the world updates that came to us from the World Geothermal Congress in 2020 and 21, we can see a continuous expansion in the world as a whole, but importantly in several significant countries, Indonesia actually being one of them, but also Turkey and Kenya. And congratulations to Indonesia moving up to number 2 position, with the United States actually still at number 1. So my message here is that although Indonesia, Turkey, and Kenya expanded a lot in the last 5 years, United States has not been standing still. We have also been expanding. And actually the USA is number 4 in additional megawatts been added over the last 5 years. So let me then turn my attention to the USA, which is the subject of what I'm going to talk about today. So if we look at renewable energy in the United States as a whole, these are the 3 principal sources: hydroelectric, wind, and solar. And you can see this is over the last 20 years or so. Over the last 15 years, wind has expanded tremendously. Over the last 7 or 8 years, solar has expanded tremendously as well. Hydro has actually remained more or less the same. In the United States, hydroelectric electricity is not classified as renewable for legal reasons, actually, that we don't need to go into here today. But focusing a little more closely on the state of California, which is where I am located, this is the last 40 years or so of renewable energy in the state of California. And if you look down here at what's happened, in the most recent years, again, you can see the tremendous expansion of wind and solar. Solar here in orange and yellow. The yellow part is personal solar generation. These are solar panels on the roofs of people's houses. And the orange one is grid-connected solar that's produced by utilities. So over the last 10 years, big expansion of wind and solar. But I draw your attention to this red bar along here. So for 40 years, you look back to 1990, 30 years ago, geothermal electricity was the principal source of renewable electricity in the state of California. And it has remained as a steady component of the renewable energy up until today. And that's a good thing. Wind and solar and geothermal are the lowest carbon emitters in a life cycle sense. So let's turn and look more closely at the state of California. And I'm also going to take a passing reference to our neighbors in the state of Nevada next to us. And I'm going to show you 5 snapshots between 2010 and 2020 of how we generated our electricity. So this is an annual generation in the state in gigawatt hours. So this is not megawatts of capacity anymore. This is actual generation. These are megawatt hours that were delivered to customers in the state of California and the state of Nevada. So as you can see in 2010, as I mentioned before, geothermal was the principal renewable electricity component in our state. Again, hydro is not counted. And geothermal was generating about 6% of the total. Our neighbors in Nevada also produced about 6% of their electricity from geothermal as well. If we shift forward to 2013, you can see 2013 was the first time actually that wind overtook geothermal in the state of California. And if we move again forward to 2015, 2015 was the first year that solar overtook wind and geothermal again in our state. Geothermal didn't change any, remained 6% throughout as it does even till today, but wind and solar were expanding during this time. We go to 2017, and again, you can see here, solar now very far ahead, geothermal still at 6%. But now I'd like you to notice what happened in our neighboring state of Nevada. So Nevada got up now to almost 9%. California remained about the same. Nevada added almost 50% of capacity between 2010 and 2017. Now, that's an important observation to make because in general, the quality or the temperature of the geothermal resources and the size in the state of Nevada is rather less than it is in the state of California. We have high temperature and quite large resources. They have lower temperature and smaller resources. And the fact that Nevada was able to expand so successfully over this last period of time is a tribute to the energy or the vigor of their geothermal industry. They're well supported by regulators in their state, and they're very, very active in their expansion. And here's the last table. We'll go ahead to 2020. California is still at 6%. And now you can see Nevada continuing to expand. They went from 8.6 to 9.4. So what Nevada has been able to do is a very promising picture for the rest of the world to try to capture these lower temperature resources. And Turkey, one of those other rapidly expanding countries, is a good example of where they've successfully done that too, with lower temperature resources. And before leaving those tables, I'd like to draw your attention to hydroelectric again. Again, this is the state of California. These are the numbers from those same 5 tables. And what you can see is that the hydroelectric output in our state, although it's large, is also very variable. Now, that isn't always the case everywhere in the world, but in the state of Nevada, state of California, we have a very variable climate pattern. So we all understand that wind and solar are intermittent over a 24-hour period. However, in California, at least, hydro is also intermittent or variable over the scale of a year or sometimes 4 or 5 years. So you can see between 2010 and 2015, we were in drought. Then in 2016, we had a lot of rainfall. It went back up. And then it went back into drought again, as we are at the moment. So we are in a severe water shortage. And currently in 2022, hydro is even lower than you see it here in 2020. Now, switching from the year output to the daily output. So this is 24 hours of the day. This is consumption of electricity in the state of California. And I drew this graph on July 19th. So this was 2 weeks ago on this particular day. And you can see how the mix varies so substantially over the course of the hours of the day. So we have a large fraction now of renewable energy. We also have a significant part of our generation comes from natural gas. And then we have there, you see hydro, nuclear, and imports. And I draw your attention to this little blue sliver up at the top here, which is batteries. I'm going to talk about batteries in a little while later on. Now, that same day, if we look, this is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. On that particular moment, 43% of the electricity was coming from renewables, not including hydro. Hydro added another 6.5%. So we were almost at 50% renewable production at that time. And then looking at this picture on the right, you can see that a very significant fraction of the renewable generation was from solar, but there's geothermal with its steady 6%. Now looking at the data in a slightly different way, this again is July 18th, 2 weeks ago, 24 hours of the day. And on that particular day, which is quite common, but not always the case, you can see that in the state of California, the wind generally blows more at night than during the day. So that's a very happy coincidence because it means that wind and solar kind of balance each other out. And then down here on the bottom, the red line is good old geothermal. We just stay the same throughout most of the day. And of course, that's because geothermal likes to be a base load source. And that, in fact, is now a problem in California. And that's one of the main things I want to talk about here today. So if we look at the generation over 24 hours of a typical day in California, the net demand is everything which is consumed. The total demand, everything consumed. The net demand is everything which is not wind and solar. And you can see on this day, which happens almost every day, between 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 7 o'clock at night, the state of California has to add 13 gigawatts of capacity, which is about 1/3 of the total over a period of 3 hours. So that's a very significant technological requirement. It means that we have to have fast ramping sources, and they have to be able to be made available and dispatched very promptly. So one of the ways that we've been able to work with that curve, so-called duck curve, is by the addition of batteries I was talking about before. So this is an image from 2018, one particular day in 2018. And what you can see in 2018, first of all, the largest capacity that day was about 90 megawatts. The batteries were not used to charge during the day and discharge in the late afternoon. They would discharge and recharge continuously through the day, mostly to fill in the gaps as the fast ramping sources were actually switched on and switched off. The picture, however, is now different. If we look at a typical day in 2022, again, this is July 18th, first of all, you notice now that the maximum generation from batteries is 2,000 megawatts. It's hugely greater than before. And now the batteries are used differently. They are, in fact, charged during the day and discharged during the night between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock in this case. So storage is what our grid now needs. And that's true over quite a lot of the other states in the US as well. This shows the expansion of battery storage, grid-connected battery storage across the United States, and how quickly it's been expanding. About half, almost half of this, 40%, actually is in the state of California. So what does this mean for geothermal? Actually, this is a problem for us because geothermal power stations don't like to be switched on and off. They're not easily dispatchable, and they're not easily used in a fast ramping way. However, we do have the capacity to dispatch and vary the output of a geothermal power station. And we've had several examples of that actually going back several decades. Here is one of them in the US. This is the Puna geothermal plant in Hawaii. And of course, Hawaii is an island, so it's an isolated grid. They can't generate more electricity than they can consume. And therefore, the Puna plant has some creative design technology that allows them to vary their load to match that of the island grid. Another example, this is actually not dispatchable, but it shows the creativity that's going into some of the newer plants in the US. This is a 3-way hybrid plant in Stillwater, Nevada, 24 megawatts of geothermal, 24 megawatts of solar PV, 47 megawatts of geothermal, and 17 megawatts of solar thermal. The solar thermal and the geothermal are thermodynamically combined, and the PVs are only electrically combined. Now, I want to stress that California's grid, it is different from other places. So what I showed you before is not necessarily true everywhere. And I'll show you 3 other examples. This is New Zealand. So this is the last 40 years or so of the electricity in New Zealand. New Zealand is about 80% renewable electricity, including hydro. And you can see the intermittent sources, wind, this turquoise section, and solar is the green one that's very small. The intermittent sources in New Zealand are not particularly large, and therefore the issue of dispatchability is not so much of a problem because hydro is relatively easily dispatched. Same is true in Iceland. They have an even larger fraction of geothermal production. This is actually all primary energy in Iceland, not just electricity, includes transportation and heating as well. And then finally, my last example is Japan. Japan is actually rather more like California. You can see their expansion of renewables, particularly solar, in the last 20 years has got a very similar image to that in California. Here is geothermal, this little yellow piece here. It's not a very large fraction of the output in Japan, and therefore whether it's base load or dispatchable actually doesn't matter too much. However, regionally, if we look at different parts of Japan, these four prefectures shown here in red, this red section is their geothermal output. So they, in fact, do have to consider dispatchability on a local level. So if we talk about storage, batteries is one way to achieve it. Pumped hydro is another way to achieve storage of electricity. But actually, we can be creative also in sometimes storing heat. So this is a system actually that is on the Stanford University campus where I work, which is based upon thermal storage and recycling. So these are 3 giant heat pumps, each of them about 15 megawatts in capacity, which are used not in a geothermal sense, but for recycling the heat on the campus. So we have, this is during the course of a year, a cooling load and a heating load. And the chilled water, which goes out to the buildings, comes back warmer. And those 3 large devices actually exchange the kilojoules from the returning chilled water into the returned hot water and basically reuse them. So over the balance of the year, the heating and the cooling are more or less the same, the area under these curves. The problem, of course, is that in the summertime, we need more cooling. This is the bright blue. And in the wintertime, we need more heating, which is the bright red. So in the summertime, we use cooling towers. In the wintertime, we use gas boilers. So phase 2, not yet implemented, but planned for the campus, is to use ground source heat exchange and put that warm water in the summertime into the ground instead of into cooling towers and save it more or less for the winter. And here is a test geothermal well for that storage being drilled on our campus. So if I can summarize then, we have lots of changes taking place in the geothermal community worldwide. We've got new companies, new countries, and new technologies. The state of Nevada, Turkey, and other places too show us that we can profitably develop lower temperature resources. And finally, my last point, which was my main message here today, is that base load, at least in some parts of the world, California being one of them, base load is no longer such a good thing. And what we now want for the future is dispatchability. And the development of technology for dispatchability in geothermal is a new target for us. So I bring you the greetings of the members of the Stanford Geothermal community, and I thank you for your attention, and I invite your questions.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Roland. That's such a brilliant talk. I learned 2 words for these from your talk. The first one is dispatchability and creativity. You need to be put it into the future geothermals development. So there are questions from the audience. Hold on a second. So there is one from Hariyanto at ITB. So what are your suggestions so that the utilizations of low, medium temperatures in Indonesia can be as sophisticated as in the United States or Turkey?
Well, so the technologies for low temperature electricity production are, I think, relatively well known. And they're used worldwide, including in Indonesia. So binary plants is basically what we're talking about here. They cost more to begin with, and their thermodynamic efficiency is lower because the temperatures are lower. But because binary plants are now, almost mass produced, that isn't quite true, but they're made very, very widely, and therefore they can be implemented quite quickly, quite often faster than flash steam plants. So therefore, typically the deployment of binary is the way that the state of Nevada and countries like Turkey have actually moved ahead. And to give another example, in Japan, where they have difficulty installing geothermal plants because of opposition from the hot spring hotels and the national parks. They've been making so-called micro binaries. So these are very small binary plants, 200 kilowatts or something like that, which can be attached to a hotel, make use to waste heat. They can be put into small villages. And that's a way not only of providing electricity, but also providing social support for the geothermal industry.
Thank you very much for the answer. For the next questions. So thank you for your presentations, Professor Roland Horne. And in Indonesia, we know that Indonesia is a very long stretched archipelago. What is the most effective way to integrate the geothermal as a backbone of electricity? Which one should come first? Is it the interconnectedness of the electricity or the exploitations should come first?
Both. So one of the things that we see, I mean, this is true worldwide. I can't speak specifically of Indonesia, but it's a general principle that the better the grid is connected, the more flexible it is. So, for example, we have an island grid. It's very difficult to dispatch power when you need it. Whereas if you have an integrated grid, which goes over a large area, some places are using electricity more than they generate, and other places are generating more than they use. As long as you have a connection between them, you can export and import electricity, and that provides greater flexibility. So as we have these increasingly variable generation sources, interconnectivity, I think, will become increasingly more important, at least in the United States and probably in Indonesia as well.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I think we are at the end of your presentations and Q&A sessions. Thank you very much, Professor Roland Horne. We really appreciate your time staying up really late in California, I bet. This is midnight, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you very much again for sharing your knowledge and your experience. There'll be a memento for you, especially as a token of our appreciations, and the community will contact you regarding the shipping address for the memento. Thank you very much again, Professor Roland Horne. Nice speaking to you. Now, before we continue to our next presenter, stay with us for a couple of minutes, and we have some videos from our sponsors. Stay tuned before we convene to the next one.
Star Energy Geothermal has grown to be the largest producer of geothermal energy in Indonesia, among the biggest in the world, delivering 875 megawatts of sustainable electrical power from our 3 geothermal sites in Jawa, Wayang Windu, Salak, and Darajat. We are continuously seeking new renewable energy, exploring new sites, empowering Indonesia's economic growth, and deploying new geothermal technologies. We believe that energy efficiency and renewable energy technology are the core elements to accelerate global energy transition. We are eager to shift the future of mankind to empower the dreams of millions in Indonesia and beyond. This is achievable through our commitment for excellence in everything we do, everywhere, every time, through every individual. We believe everyone is a bright star and keeps inspiring others day in, day out to make the changes we promote to the world. In a bigger picture, we value every relationship. No matter how big or small the circle of humanity is, let's make tomorrow brighter.
Welcome back. This is the second speakers on the, there will be a second speaker on the second sessions of the second day at IIGW 2022. Before I invite our second speaker, I would like to read his CV. Our second one is Mr. Daroyni. I think this is a familiar face. I've seen him many times at televisions,
Really?
reviewing Formula One, if I'm not mistaken. Pak Roy, Anu Maverick
it was
Formula
all time.
One. Pak Roy is a business development director at Southeast Asia and Australia Technology at Kellogg Brown and Root, KBR, USA. Before he's taking his positions at the moment, he started working with a global business manager as a global business manager in PT Rekayasa Industri Indonesia, and then moved as representative head of Malaysia office before moving to country general manager Indonesia and Malaysia at Wyson Engineering Limited. And then he went into the different companies as business development directors for Indonesia at ONG, Black and Veatch, USA. Now he's a business development director for Southeast Asia and Australia Technology at Kellogg Brown Root and KBR USA. He got his degree as a mechanical engineer from Institute Technology Bandung, Indonesia, and he's going to talk about the prospects of geothermal in green ammonia productions. Now, before I'll invite Pak Roy to the screen, there will be another Q&A session after his presentations. Hopefully, there will be quite a few discussions that will build up for the presentations. Pak Roy, please, the screen time is yours.
Thank you, Alfend, for very nice introduction. So yeah, let me. Well, okay. First, I think I come from a different background than most of the speakers here, while others have very strong background in geothermal, but KBR is actually a process technology licensor who has ammonia as one of the licensed process within its technology portfolio. We don't have any direct correlation with geothermal, but don't worry. Today, I'll show you how geothermal energy can finally be exported, not only by electricity transmission, but it will be transported intercontinental by vessels. So I hope this will be interesting for those who has an interest on geothermal. Let me start with the hydrogen. Hydrogen is the lightest element in the universe, yet it also has the largest availability. 75% of our universe made up by hydrogen, which is mostly concentrated in a massive planet like Jupiter and stars like the sun. Hydrogen is so light, lighter than air, that makes it dissipated rapidly when it released, allowing for rapid dispersal in the case of leaking. It also have a huge calorific value. It has a 3 times calorific value than LPG, 3 times than gasoline, even 5 times than the high rank coal. And everyone knows that hydrogen is very clean. When it's burned, it doesn't emit any carbon because it has no carbon. So how come hydrogen has not yet become a popular fuel yet? The answer is because we have some challenges over hydrogen. What are they? First is how to generate hydrogen in a clean way. This is first. Second is how to store it. We know that hydrogen is highly flammable, and it's a risk if there is a contact of hydrogen with the oxygen. So storing is something challenging for us, and how to transport it is also a challenge. So most of the discussion in past decades, people concentrating on how to generate hydrogen in the economic way. There comes the electrolyzers discussion and several other methods. But now I think it is also the time for us to think about how to transport, how to store the hydrogen, because we are talking about the how to supply the energy, the clean energy for, globally. So then we have to consider some methods of exporting hydrogen. from the with the next slide, we can see the consideration of how to transport hydrogen from different perspective, as like from the importer perspective, from the exporter, or from the transporter itself. There are several options to be considered. First is to liquefy the hydrogen, or to compress the hydrogen, to convert it into a MCH, methyl cyclohexane, or to convert it into methanol, or to convert it to ammonia. The first two methods are still hydrogen. It's just a different phase. So we still have those risks of high flammability of the hydrogen, and the challenge of the hydrogen as a very low volumetric density that they have. And we need to evaluate these options of the method from a different perspective. At least there are 6 things to be considered. First is from the commercialization point of view, or from the technology readiness level, CapEx and OpEx, of course, footprint, safety, environmental, and stability and losses. If we can see from the safety and environmental, also the stability losses, ammonia for sure leads the way, because even though the ammonia have a very high calorific value as similar to coal, but it is not really high flammable when it comes to contact with oxygen. It is environmental friendly, of course, because ammonia has no carbon in the molecules. And it is also stable, very low losses, because we can store it in the liquid phase. So what about CapEx and OpEx? But I think first, before CapEx and OpEx, we need to show you what is it actually from those options that we have in the previous slide. Liquefying the hydrogen is basically just to liquefy the hydrogen, just like we do for the LNG. After we liquefy it, it becomes a liquid hydrogen. Then we can transport it to other location or other continent. Then when it reaches to the point, final delivery point, then we have to gasify it back into hydrogen. And when it comes to the other option like MCH, we need a carrier of a hydrogen that we use the toluene. Toluene is using to process the hydrogen to make MCH. When it comes to MCH, it is liquid phase. Then we can transport it, and then we purify it, and toluene becomes toluene again back to the original location. So we have here some additional cost of transporting toluene back to the original location. This is also the challenge of MCH. For the ammonia, maybe some of you knows that the ammonia is process between hydrogen and nitrogen. So we need the nitrogen supply coming from air, and ammonia will be made by reacting the nitrogen with the hydrogen coming from the electrolysis. And when it comes to ammonia, we can transport it to the location. Then whenever it reach the location, we have option whether to dehydrogenate the ammonia back to the hydrogen, then use it as a fuel, or we can also use the ammonia directly as a fuel, as a direct fuel of ammonia. And the technology is now under development. There are some researchers that is now underway of doing this. So this is just to show you how the process are. And now we back to the consideration of selecting which method is the best. Now we are considering from the CapEx and OpEx point of view. those methods that I showed before. Liquid hydrogen, MCH, ammonia, and ammonia. This is ammonia with the decomposition, where we need to break or crack the ammonia molecules back to the hydrogen, or we can use ammonia as a fuel itself. So you can see from the graph, of course, the with the time, technology will be developed and cost will be less. But in overall, I think ammonia is leading the way as the best method to transfer hydrogen. Yeah, so far I don't talk about geothermal at all. Maybe some of you will ask what is the relation with this kind of things with geothermal, but I'll show you soon here about the hydrogen and ammonia block diagram that we are aiming to do in the green energy in the future. When it comes to hydrogen, we can use hydrogen directly to as a power, also fuel for vehicle, refining, or others. But if we need to transport the hydrogen, then we need ammonia. So here we see the ammonia comes into the picture. Sorry. In the old days, ammonia mostly used for the fertilizer. You can see here 186 million ton per annum ammonia is produced to become a fertilizer. But many experts predict that in the not so far in the future, ammonia production globally will multiply by many numbers, like 1,000 million ton per annum, mostly used for the energy, no more in the fertilizer sector. So this is something to show us that hydrogen and ammonia will be a key player to have a significant role in the future. But sorry, we still have a challenge when we talk about ammonia on the resource of the renewable energy or the green energy. So this is something that we should focus, and I believe geothermal can play a significant role in this by telling you this. So far, as much as KBR is helping clients globally to do the green ammonia, most of the project based on the solar. But we have a significant problem in solar because its intermittency characters of the solar. During the day, as you can see here, 24 hours, only 6 to 7 hours solar is available to provide the energy into the system. But the other 70 to 18 hours, we need to have other energy as a backup. So most of the cases, clients use the solar with a much higher capacity because they need to charge the battery when the battery then take over the solar role in the evening. So here we can see there are some additional capacity needed to add to charge the battery and so on. And even with the battery in place, in the evening when the solar is not available, we need to run the ammonia plant in a very low capacity or turn down the capacity like 30% or even 10% of the nameplate capacity. This is something also a challenge for us because running the ammonia plant in a very low capacity, it is okay, but will consume much higher energy, specific energy. And ammonia plant cannot be shut down because you will need like 2 or 3 weeks to reoperate the ammonia plant. So yeah, we need to maintain the ammonia running at all time. Then I can show you the real challenge of the intermittency characters that so far we have with the solar energy resource. The solution that we we can have from the intermittency problem is there are several. First, as I mentioned earlier, we need to have bigger power source, bigger capacity. Then we need to add battery. Then we need to have hydrogen storage, maybe small one, because hydrogen must be keep being supplied to the ammonia plant, because ammonia plant cannot be shut down. And as I mentioned earlier, turn down ammonia synthesis loop into a very low capacity. This is also a challenge because the plant cannot be shut down. So now this is where the geothermal can take place. If we can use geothermal, we don't have this challenge like intermittency problem, because geothermal can be available the whole day, the whole weeks, and the whole years. Now we see the numbers. This is the numbers that I took from University of Oxford, from the paper. This is about the LCOA of ammonia, levelized cost of ammonia. Basically, this is a production cost of green ammonia, and you can see the element of the LCOA. There is also some improvement on the cost over the years from 2025 to 2030. And then I'll try to compare it with the numbers if you use geothermal. As you can see here, as I mentioned, if we use geothermal, then we can have a lower capacity of the energy or the power. But I put the same number here with the consideration that maybe the geothermal investment is slightly higher. So yeah, let's take the same number here. But we can have a saving from the storage of hydrogen, because we don't need any storage of hydrogen, because geothermal have no intermittency problem, and we don't have any battery as well. Then we can see the numbers here reduced quite a lot, like 18%, 11% up to 18%, compared to the green ammonia, which using solar. Then, as a conclusion here, I believe green ammonia and geothermal can complement each other, at least from two perspectives. First, the geothermal, I understand, even I'm not the expert on the geothermal, I understand that geothermal is not transportable. But now, since we have a green ammonia, which has the role as an energy carrier or hydrogen carrier, green ammonia can help geothermal to transport to other location by converting into green ammonia. Then in green ammonia itself, it has a challenge of it needs a stable supply of energy. Then in this case, geothermal can help because it has a non-intermittency characters. So this kind of cooperation or complementary to each other is a good chance for geothermal and green ammonia to be invested in the future. The next slide is talking about the usage of ammonia, green ammonia, when it reaches to final destination. As of now, as technology is under development, people still needs to crack the ammonia back to the hydrogen. So they need to crack the whole ammonia into hydrogen. Then it's only can be used at the gas turbine using hydrogen as a fuel. But not in the future. Technology is, I believe, is developing quite quickly. Then I think we can mix between the hydrogen and ammonia to fuel the gas turbine, like 70% ammonia or and 30% of hydrogen. Then, of course, the goal is that gas turbine itself can be 100% fueled by ammonia, not in the long future, we hope. This is the LCOA or LCOE, levelized cost of energy or electricity of the green ammonia. These three colors here, blue, dark blue, and purple, is showing hydrogen or ammonia levelized cost of electricity. With the purple one is 100% of ammonia. As you can see, it is not so far away from the gas-fired power plant with the CCS. And when it comes to 50% utilities, even about the same, those ammonia-fired electricities have a kind of a similar levelized cost of electricity. So this is good news. Then I think in the future, as the electrolyzer technology and solar technology keep being developed, then I believe the cost will be lower and lower along the time. But now the question is, why do we need to be green? Actually, this is the question being asked by my brother. He's been blue since he was born. The answer to that question is that we need to be green because carbon tax is really correlated with the cost. And as you can see here, it is not standardized yet, but in the future, I believe carbon tax will increase year by year. And if we take an example here, Netherlands with the $35 per ton of CO2. If we take a sample of a coal-fired power plant, it usually emits about 1 ton of CO2 per 1 megawatt hour. Then $35 here will be correlated with $35 per megawatt hour as additional cost of electricity in the case that Netherlands still have a coal-fired power plant. So, I mean, the point here is that the carbon tax will be significantly affect the cost of the electricity if we not moving from now to anticipate. Well, now back to the what exactly KBR is. A little bit about KBR. We are the leader of ammonia technology. Of course, we have other technology in refining, petrochemicals, and so on. But for ammonia, we're really leading the way because we are having like 50% market share since 1944. And some competitors may say that, oh, okay, KBR have a 50% share because we exist before other licensors, which is not true, because we can show the second picture here. Even for the last 12 years, since 2010, KBR also have 50% market share. So there is a reason why we have this big market share. It's because of we keep developing our technology, and we hold several world records on several sectors. We are the only licensor that can design 3,000 metric ton per day of ammonia. No other licensor can do that. The largest capacity that our competitor can do is about 2,200 metric ton per day. And now we are even have finished the design for 6,000 metric ton per day of ammonia, single train, single everything. And we also hold the world record of the most energy efficient of ammonia. It is in a Chambal plant in India. It is 22.6 million MMBTU per ton of ammonia. Our competitors are not even closer to this. And we also hold the record of the most reliable plant. This 2,662, if you count, this is almost 6 years. 6 years minus 1 month of continuous operation without a single day of stop. So not only this plant, but averagely KBR plants running in a very good numbers of reliability of days. And this is something that we are also proud of. This is also a future of our clean environment, is that soon technology to convert CO2 into black carbon will be available. This company is developing this technology. They are cooperating with KBR. We are using natural gas of feed of the ammonia as a conventional ammonia plant. Of course, the conventional ammonia plant produces CO2, but CO2 is captured, and this our partner convert the CO2 into black carbon and O2 or oxygen. So zero emission, because black carbon can be put somewhere or burn or I mean put into somewhere and not emitted to the atmosphere. So that's my slides, and we have one slide as a conclusion. First conclusion is that the geothermal with its non-intermittency character has significant benefit in green hydrogen production, and ammonia is the best hydrogen carrier economically. Geothermal and green ammonia complement each other to improve economics of global green energy distribution chain. And carbon tax will simply put fossil fuel-based energy out of picture. That's my presentation today. Thank you for having me, and I'm inviting any question if there are.
Thank you very much. Another brilliant talks. All right, thank you very much. I think I learned quite a bit about these ammonia and hydrogen, and I did my homework as well. As
really?
of today, I think there are more
I
than
become nervous
7. There are more than 7 publications that saying there's a new novel progress in evaluations of a new geothermal-based multi-generational plant with primary outputs of hydrogen and ammonia, which I think made the future a bit brighter.
The fact is much more than that, actually. In Australia itself, there are more than 10 studies that KBR itself is doing right now.
That's brilliant. That's even more brilliant. I think people more and more get excited and interested into trying to make a multi-generational plan so that you can have one-stop shop for a green energy, so that it makes the world cleaner, I think. So is there any questions from the audience, please, committees? I can understand that there are some questions posed, but maybe there'll be one for the time being. Okay, thank you for the presentation, says Ahmad at ITB. So the utilizations of hydrogen has been used in some developed country. What do you think is the challenge in Indonesia? Was it the regulations or the market has not been there yet?
Yeah, okay, this is a very good question, and I need to ask you back, Alfend. Do you need honest answer or dishonest answer?
Well, we can appreciate both, actually, so that we can learn from both sides.
Let me be honest, but please excuse me if I am too honest. The character of Indonesian clients here, I don't blame anyone anyway, but with the situation that we have here, people is reluctant to start something new because of many reasons, mostly about the risk that they will face in the case that decision that they made is a proof that it is with some reason it is not a right decision. So those conclusion that I have is based on my meetings with many clients in Indonesia. They're reluctant to start something new. They they would be more comfortable to see everyone else in other countries apply this kind of anything new related to technology or whatever. So yeah, we don't like to be first. That's simple answer that I can. But of course, it is something that I mean, it is not good actually. We need to change that.
It is something that counterintuitive to the science communities, that everyone wants to be first in developing things, right? You should be first. You should be the lead of getting all these technology coming in or research that's going on.
Just a quick information. Our neighbor country, I will not mention any name, but our neighbor country has a very different perspective on these kind of things. They need to be first for everything. So yeah, we need to change ourselves. That's the point.
Okay, that's brutal answer, I think, but it is need to. I think we need to know that from the both perspective, from the providers and from the clients that you've met along the process. Do we still have time for another questions, committee? Is there any more questions? So I think sadly we are at the end of the presentation. Somehow I know that today we will talk about hydrogen, so I put the H.
Okay. Brilliant.
That's purely trivial. But thank you very much for your time and
thank you, Alfend. Thank you, everyone.
Your insight in sharing your knowledge and your experience. As our token of gratitude, the committee will contact you regarding the memento that you've seen virtually at the moment. They will contact you regarding the shipping address. Thank you very much again for your talks and your insights on the hydrogens for
Thanks for
green energy. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending the sessions. We have finished with the last speakers of the second sessions for the second day at the IIGW 2022. There will be a next session, the third one for today, that will be led by my colleagues, Mas Dimas, Taha, Maulana. He will be guiding you throughout the third sessions up until the closing for today's IIGW 2022. Thank you very much again for attending the sessions. Before we move into the next one, there will be a round of videos from our sponsors. Thank you very much. Stay healthy, everyone. Good afternoon.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dimas and I will continue this session for today, actually the third session for today. And we will have two speakers, which are, the first is Mr. Fleming from GeoX, and then the second one is Graeme Beardsmore from University of Melbourne and also from IGA. Unfortunately, our first speakers, Mr. Fleming, has a problem to join with us. Maybe in couple of minutes will join with us. So without wasting the time, actually maybe I will read the presentation, Mr. Fleming presentation. Meanwhile, waiting Mr. Fleming join with us. And then maybe we can take a picture before we start our session. I will invite Mr. Beardsmore. Are you already with us? Hello, good evening, maybe, Mr. Beardsmore. Are you from Melbourne or?
I am in Melbourne, correct.
How are you? Very good.
I'm very well. Yes, thank you. It's just gone dinner time here. So 3 hours in front of you.
It's already evening, maybe. Okay, we need to capture our moment right now. Please, the operators, take the picture. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ninik and Mrs. Nani. Okay, we will begin the first presentation that will be from Andrew Fleming from GeoX, company that maybe come from Colorado, USA, and this company has a lot of projects regarding geothermal. Maybe some of them are in geothermal exploitation. And Mr. Andrew Fleming today we'll talk about how to extract geothermal actually from supercritical geothermal. This is a new technology, especially for us in Indonesia. Maybe we can start. Committee, are Mr. Andrew Fleming already joined us? Not yet. So without wasting our time, maybe we can start the presentation, and I will try to listen to the audience. Okay, the topics is GeoX supercritical. I don't know how to say it. 10 times or 10x performance geothermal. The only terawatt scalable renewable baseload energy that can change the world meeting in the global warming CO2 deadline in 2050. Next. Yeah, this presentation is based on the real problem, which is no scalable baseload renewable that can replace coal and power the world. Yeah, indeed, I think. And the coal power produce about 45% of CO2 and 83% of particulate matter, 2.5 globally. And then global coal power produce about 18 billion tons of CO2 per year. And we need to eliminate that number in 2050. Next. And this is the background, right? And then the GeoX give or provide the solution that GeoX, the only renewable baseload that is capable of replacing coal and powering the world. Yeah. And as I said before, that GeoX uniquely use supercritical resources, which is the temperature around 850 degree Fahrenheit or 450 degree Celsius, which is dry rocks area in the orange at your picture you can see. Initially targeting drilling down to depth of 15,000 until 25,000 feet, which is very deep, I think, very deep, around maybe 3,000 meters or 3 kilometers, up to 200 feet or 6 meters per hours, and then 2,000 feet runs with new PDC bits in granite. And then GeoX is only scalable terawatt base load that could replace coal power by 20 and 50 and save 18 billion tons of CO2 years. Next. Nah, this is the comparison between the conventional geothermal with the GeoX supercritical technology. You can see here that mostly in geothermal conventional, for 35 wells, it's equals with 50 megawatt electric. Meanwhile, for GeoX supercritical, for just 3 wells, it equals 50 megawatts electric. That's GeoX set it as 10 times more power per well. And then the geothermal development in the worldwide is only 15,000 megawatt in last 10 years. That are the reasons maybe because very rare to find in one place, which is hot rocks, and the second is from a permeable rock, and then from abundant water, and then the fourth is contracted circulating water. And then the GeoX technology, they suggest that multi-terawatt to power the world is used in permeable rocks that found globally. That the GeoX construct a heat generating reservoir of 16 billion cubic feet. Next. The committee, please interrupt me if Mr. Fleming already joined. Okay, I will continue. The why is supercritical? GeoX said that because it's the only type of geothermal that provides terawatts of electricity, not only megawatts, but terawatts. He said it's very, very exciting. GeoX is the only technology that produces supercritical vapor, which produce up to 10 times more enthalpy. That produce up to 10 times more electricity than conventional geothermal. GeoX produce 10 times more electricity, which is 50 megawatt per triplet, and then 20 triplets equals to 1,000 megawatt. As you can see here, that this is the illustration of how GeoX extract the supercritical zone, which is around 450 degrees Celsius. They use triplets, which is 3 pipes. 3 pipes of heat exchanger actually. The area is 16 billion cubic feet area or volume. each triplets would generate 15 megawatt megawatt megawatt, and then supercritical film produced in orange box in example is heat exchanger. This is the technology using maybe kind of horizontal well using triplet heat exchanger. As GeoX showed that it will be around 15 until 25,000 feet, or maybe around 5 until 8,000 meters. Please continue the committee. And this is the illustration of the modeling, I think. You can see that this is a fully coupled heat exchanger and also rock stimulation and thermal model. You can see that hot dry rock is still need to stimulate to create the probability. For this case is to create a fracture along the geothermal area. Millions of years old existing granite fracture that GeoX utilized, and GeoX utilized hydro shearing to open up existing rock fractures. And then if required, we also use thermal hydraulic stimulation at pressure 2 until 3 times less than oil and gas. GeoX Energy carefully designed stimulation program to be 5 to 15 times lower than seismicity threshold that can be felt at the surface. I think this is very interesting. Okay, next. GeoX also stated that their technology is the lowest scalable baseload, levelized cost of energy. You can see here that the levelized cost of energy compared with geothermal gas combined cycle, coal and gas peaking, nuclear, and also solar wind plus gas storage. Yeah, based on this data, GeoX is the lowest price. Maybe 5 times less than geothermal. Okay, next. Yeah, you can see here in the GeoX economics compared with the for their example project. It is with the numbers you can see here. And for example, here with 15, sorry, can you back again? The computer, sorry. Yeah, this is the example for 50 megawatt size and 1000 megawatt size. You can see the revenues for that size project. Okay, next. And this is the team where Mr. Andrew Fleming is the founder of the GeoX. And this is, I think, it's very good team from around the different background. Next. And this is the portfolio of GeoX. You can read here from 2018 until the future project campaign. There are a lot of implementation of GeoX technology and design. Okay, next. Yeah, I think this is all of the presentation. And Mr. Fleming not join with us yet. Okay. If you have question, all of the audience, unfortunately, I cannot answer your question because it's not my presentation. I just read it for you. Maybe you can write your question at the chat box. Then, if Mr. Fleming join us later, he will ask your question one by one. Okay. Actually, we still have 5 minutes before we start the second presenter with Mr. Beardsmore. I think because Mr. Fleming are not joining us yet, I think we will jump to the next presenter. But before go to the next presentation, we will have a short break, and please enjoy the commercial our sponsor video.
Welcome to Medco Power Indonesia. Our vision is to become a independent power producer and a reliable operation and maintenance company. We are focusing on clean, renewable, environmental friendly, and efficient power projects. Please take a look at our achievements as a power company of choice.
In Sarula, North Sumatra, with our partners, we own and operate the world's largest geothermal plant under a single contract. It's one of the most efficient geothermal power plants in Indonesia. With 40% of the world's potential geothermal resources, Indonesia has plenty of room to grow. We are now tapping this potential in Belawan Ijen, East Java, developing a 110 megawatt geothermal power plant.
PT ITB merupakan badan usaha milik Institut Teknologi Bandung yang didirikan pada tanggal 2 Maret 2004. Sebagai badan usaha milik ITB, PT ITB bertugas menggalang dana untuk menunjang kegiatan akademik ITB melalui kegiatan usaha di bidang konsultasi, pelatihan, dan pengembangan teknologi tepat guna. Dalam menjalankan tugasnya, PT ITB didukung oleh ITB melalui pemberdayaan tenaga ahli ITB yang berpengalaman secara nasional dan internasional, fasilitas laboratorium, serta jaringan kemitraan nasional dan internasional. PT ITB, to serve for your betterment and the nation.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. I will continue our discussion. The next presenter will be Mr. Graeme Beardsmore. Hello, Mr. Beardsmore, are you already joining?
I am here.
Yes,
and
thank you.
I am ready to present, yes.
Yeah, firstly, before we
will-
start, maybe we can take a picture. Please, the operators. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Mr. Beardsmore is a senior fellow in crustal heat flow in University of Melbourne, right, Mr. Beardsmore?
Correct.
In Australia. And then Mr. Beardsmore, also Secretary of the Asia Western Pacific Regional Branch of IGA. And Mr. Graeme Beardsmore will talk about the unconventional geothermal system, which is hot dry rock. Actually, Mr. Beardsmore has a lot of research in heat flow, crustal heat flow actually, if I'm not mistaken. And I have a little short about Mr. Beardsmore publication. Is one of them is global heat flow database, right, Mr. Beardsmore? I think this research is very remarkable and also useful for geothermal potential mapping. Okay, without further ado, I think Mr. Beardsmore, you can start your presentation if you ready. The screen is yours, Mr. Beardsmore.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you just confirm that you're seeing the full screen version of my talk and not the speaker presentation?
Yeah,
version?
sure.
You can see the full screen. Excellent. Thank you for having me and inviting me to speak at this conference. I've been invited as Secretary of the Asia Western Pacific Regional Branch of the IGA, the International Geothermal Association. But I expect I was more invited because I'm from Australia, and Australia, for either the right or wrong reasons, is now closely associated with engineered geothermal systems or hot dry rock systems. So I've been invited to speak on that topic. I'll first introduce who the Asia Western Pacific Regional Branch of the IGA is. It's a cooperative group of national geothermal associations covering the geographic region that extends from India, China, Mongolia in the northwest, all the way down through Asia, Southeast Asia, and across to New Zealand and the Western Pacific Islands. The regional branch is governed by a forum of 7 elected representatives from around the region, including 2 representatives from Indonesia. We have the chairman of this conference, Ninik, is one of our forum members, and the chairman of the regional branch is Jeffrey Hariyanto from the Philippines. So that's who the regional branch is. Now, my presentation, I was invited to speak about engineered geothermal systems, so I will begin the presentation by just defining what I mean by engineered geothermal systems. And it's possible that different people have different ideas about EGS and hot dry rock. So I'm going to define what I mean when I talk about EGS. I'm going to look briefly at an Indonesian case study of EGS, which does exist, some emerging technology from Europe and North America, and finish up with just some brief thoughts on where EGS might sit in Indonesia's strategy for geothermal developments. And I'll try to get through all of that in just 20 minutes. And I'm already 4 minutes into my talk. So when you think holistically about a geothermal system, this is what I think of it as: a volume of rock or a reservoir which holds heat. And we draw heat from that volume of rock and put it to some useful purpose, often in Indonesia to generate electricity, but elsewhere around the world it might be for direct use for heating or industrial uses. Now, into that volume of rock, we need to move heat into that rock, and usually we need to flow water in either liquid or vapor form through that rock to continually replenish both the liquid in the rock and the heat in the rock. And it's the flow of water is not necessarily the same as the flow of heat. Heat can flow through conduction without requiring water. Now, in the geological world, in real geological settings, there are many different combinations of heat sources, heat transfer mechanisms, sources of water, migration pathways for that water, and where the water ultimately ends up at the surface and where the heat ultimately ends up, and also many different combinations of rock characteristics that can make up a geothermal reservoir. So when I think of a conventional geothermal system, a steam reservoir or a liquid steam reservoir drawn on for geothermal power production, it's convectively recharged heat and water source. So the source of both heat and water is convection, and that water and heat flows into the reservoir through fractures, permeable faults, or permeable sediments. And you can't just have water flowing in, it flows through the reservoir and ultimately makes its way out to the surface through springs or geysers, fumaroles, or perhaps recirculates through a blind convective recirculation system. But the important thing is there is heat and water continuously convecting into the reservoir rock, and we can drill into that rock and extract the steam, which is actively recharged in real time. Now, a dry geothermal system that is a target for hot dry rock, or an engineered geothermal system, the only source of heat recharge or natural entry of heat into the system is through conduction. There is no natural convection into the reservoir rock. That's by definition. If there is natural convection, then it's a conventional geothermal system in my mind. But a system that's a target for EGS development only has water in situ. So it's a tight system. There is no hydraulic connection to surrounding rocks. The only heat recharge into the system is through conduction, and there is no natural water recharge into the reservoir rock. So that's the difference between the conventional reservoir and the hot dry rock type reservoir. So dry geothermal systems, hot dry rocks, have lots of heat. It's stored heat, but very little natural water in the rock. And there is no natural flow of water into the rock. So heat is recharged by conduction, but there is no natural fluid recharge. It's the geothermal equivalent of a tight gas deposit, if you like, using petroleum terminology. So instead of a tight gas deposit, we think of a tight heat deposit, that the heat will not naturally flow from the rock simply by drilling into it, because there is no natural flow of water that we can tap into to extract that heat. So we need to engineer a way that allows water to flow through that hot reservoir to gather the heat, and so that we can then extract that hot water to the surface and generate power or use the heat directly. And really, the way we set about doing that is to reactivate or enhance natural fracture systems. So we're really looking for fractures that already exist in the rock, and then enhance the permeability of those fractures through hydraulic, thermal, or chemical stimulation. Now, they may be pure fractures in a tight crystalline rock, or they may be fractured, partially porous media, so fractured sandstones or fractured volcanic sediments. But the important thing is we are looking for already fractured rocks. The engineered geothermal systems that have been investigated dozens of times around the world have all targeted natural fractured rock. Nobody has really succeeded in producing a new fracture yet from a tight crystalline hot rock. So what we're trying to do is reactivate a fracture, enhance a natural fracture so that water will flow through it, where in its natural state, it's impermeable. The permeability of fractures is intimately associated with the three-dimensional tectonic stress field that is applied, that is the natural stress field to which those fractures are being exposed. So that's a very critical point. You cannot investigate engineered geothermal systems, develop engineered geothermal systems without very well constraining and understanding the natural stress field that's applying to the natural fractures and how that stress field is going to impact on our attempts to engineer through hydraulic, chemical, or thermal stimulation. So the natural stress field in Indonesia is very heavily influenced by the subduction of the Indo-Australian plate right along the arc. And not surprisingly, maximum compressive stress tends to be roughly in northeast, plus or minus a few degrees. But locally, that stress may not be northeast. It can be guided by other natural geological features, which can distort that general northeast compressive stress into other directions. So we really need to understand the local stress field if we're going to develop engineered geothermal systems at the prospect and project level. So just a very quick cartoon as to how the stress field impacts permeability. If you imagine a very simple planar fracture in a rock, and if we were to apply compressive stress from the left and the right, that fracture will tense open and become more permeable. So with no stress, and then compressive stress acting along the fracture will tend to open it and make it more permeable. And that is what we see in the natural world. Permeable fractures tend to be those ones very closely aligned to the maximum compressive stress direction. And that's been very clearly demonstrated in many places around the world. Now, there's another way that the natural three-dimensional stress field impacts fractures, and that's to do with fractures that aren't directly parallel to the maximum compressive stress direction, but are at some angle theta between the maximum and minimum compressive stress directions. And there's a critical range of angles that make fractures in those angles amenable to stimulation and reactivation through hydraulic stimulation means. So fractures that are critically aligned, and that angle tends to be around 25 to 35 degrees or 25 to 30 degrees from the maximum compressive stress direction. So those fractures that are critically aligned within the natural stress field are susceptible to hydroshearing. And by hydroshearing, it's a very simple concept, but engineering-wise quite challenging. So drill into the dry rock, inject high-pressure water into the existing fractures. That high-pressure water will tend to open the fractures through hydraulically jacking open the fractures, if you like. When the effective normal stress on the fracture is reduced to a critical level, the fracture will naturally reactivate due to the prevailing stress field, slip slightly, very small seismic event, may slip only on a matter of a centimetre or two. And then when the pressure of the injected water is released again, the fracture does not fit neatly back together, and the overall permeability of the fracture has been enhanced. Now, believe it or not, EGS has been attempted by at least 64 different projects around the world since the early days of the mid-1970s. This list was collated by Roland Horne, who gave a talk earlier in this conference today, I believe. And so there's a lot of experience. Dozens and dozens of EGS experiments have been attempted around the world, including this one in Indonesia, which we'll just look more closely at. So in the Salak field in West Java in 2007, 2008, Star Energy, I believe it was, decided to experiment with a injection well that was not performing economically. There was low injectivity in well number 18-1. So as an experiment, an engineered geothermal system experiment, Star Energy increased the pump rate into that poorly performing injection well, which was striking roughly northeast, or the very small amount of injection that was possible was linked to faults that were striking roughly northwest, northeast, which, if you remember, is very well aligned with the natural compressive stress direction. So that reconfirms my earlier point. So over a period of 10 months, high pressure water was injected into that poorly performing injection well, and over time, Star found that the injectivity increased threefold, in fact, through that high pressure injection, and sustained that high injectivity after that period as well. So this was almost an unplanned EGS experiment, but it achieved the purpose that a more targeted short-term EGS program would hope to achieve, a threefold increase in injectivity or projectivity. It was interesting that a similar program was tried in well 18-2, which had a different strike, which was not aligned with those natural stress field as well, which was not as well aligned with the natural stress field, and it failed to achieve the same results. So I'm going to jump quickly. My time is ticking away rapidly. Some emerging technology, firstly out of Europe, where since 2013, there's been a lot of European Union money put into geothermal research, especially in engineered geothermal systems. And there are 4 projects in particular. 44 million euros was invested between 2015 and 2019 to demonstrate an EGS stimulation in the Iceland deep drilling project. So super hot drilling project where that was a thermal stimulation. So inject relatively cold water into that super hot well, and the injectivity of the well managed to increase about 50%. So moderate increase in injectivity for a large investment, but it did increase, so it was a technical success. The Shore project received 6 million from the European Union to investigate radial water drilling technology, which is a promising technology to actually initiate new fractures where there may not be existing fractures. So high pressure water jets directly at the rock face downhole to initiate new fractures, which can then lead to a future hydraulic stimulation program for an EGS type project. So another 6 million euro spent. The Image program from 2013, 2017, 13 million euros, developed some exciting new exploration methods. And I believe some of these may have been trialed in Indonesia, but don't hold me to that. But that project made significant advances in vertical seismic profiling, geochemical, geothermometry, 3D temperature gravity modeling, and other techniques specifically targeting identifying and characterizing fractured rocks for EGS projects. And the Therm, rather a small project, still ongoing, about to finish a desktop coupled thermo-hydro-mechanical modeling project. I'm going to push on for hopefully only another couple of minutes, looking at emerging technology from the United States. The GeoVision report from the United States Department of Energy in 2019 set a national goal for the United States to generate 60 gigawatts of geothermal generation capacity, so up from the current approximately 3 gigawatts, so a 20-fold increase in geothermal generation capacity by 2050. And the GeoVision report recognizes that much of that new capacity will need to come from engineered geothermal systems, and that has opened up quite a large amount of funding towards EGS research and development, new funding in the United States. The original EGS concept came from the United States, and now the United States is again leading the way in spending R&D money. The flagship EGS research site in the United States is now the Utah Forge site. It's a physical site where new drilling technologies and reservoir characterization, stimulation, and sustainability and management challenges can be trialed and tested. The most recent grant round awarded $50 million to 17 research projects, and that's an ongoing and very active research site in Utah, and making some very compelling advances continuously in EGS technologies. Quick one from the commercial world. Baker Hughes has developed this multi-stage stimulation tool for the shale gas industry, but there are companies in the United States that are looking to adapt this shale gas technology and transfer it across to geothermal energy and EGS developments, and it has been successfully trialed multi-stage stimulation, so stimulating more than one part of the borehole simultaneously, so speeding up and making the stimulation much more efficient and effective. And as the previous talk touched on this point, a conduction-only closed-loop systems is another sort of entirely different bucket of engineering an underground geothermal system in dry rocks, where we're not aiming to flow physical water through the hot rock, but simply to drill boreholes and then circulate water through those drilled boreholes to make an underground radiator, heat up the water by conductively drawing heat from the rock and bringing that hot water back to the surface. And the leading company in this space is really Ever Technologies, and although there are 2 or 3 close followers, the big challenge here is going to be bringing down their drilling costs. So what are the opportunities for Indonesia in engineered geothermal systems? I think the experiment 2007-2008 in West Java was very compelling. It was a very successful experiment, and there are very likely other poorly performing injection and production wells around Indonesia, which could be looked closely at for EGS stimulation to make those stranded production and injection bores connect them back to the main reservoir and turn them into commercial assets. In a similar way, there may be undrilled sites around existing reservoirs that are favorably aligned with the stress field, that new wells drilled and stimulated in brownfield sites around existing reservoirs could extend those reservoirs and increase the size of the potential resource or the demonstrated resource. There may be hot fractured basement beneath basins, and I'm thinking on Sumatra, particularly drill through the hot sediments into the basement and explore for fractured rocks which may be developed using EGS techniques. and using the emerging conduction only closed loop systems. Perhaps there are some very hot, tight rocks close to the surface within the top 500 or 600 meters, perhaps, that could make very cheap drilling targets for conduction only closed loop systems. So they would be my 4 dot points for where Indonesia might focus attention for engineered geothermal systems. And I know I used 25 of my 20 minutes now, so I'll wrap it up there. But thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Beardsmore, for your very interesting knowledge that you have been shared with us. Now we will begin to the question and answer session. We will have about 7 minutes. I think we can discuss 2 or 3 questions maybe. And I will give the audience for the opportunities to question Mr. Beardsmore. The first question will be from Restantieka from Bream, and the question is, will artificial recharge helps retaining the sustainability of the dry rock systems? Mr. Beardsmore, please give your comment.
So I'm actually trying to find the question in the Q&A. Can you read it out again?
Yeah, will artificial recharge can help retaining the sustainability of the dry rock systems? Mr. Beardsmore.
Active recharge. By definition, in my mind, there is no active recharge in an EGS system. The only recharge comes from re-injection of the circulation fluid.
It was artificial recharge. For example, using submersible.
Oh, artificial recharge. So like in the geysers, using the sewage water in the geysers. Yes, I believe artificial recharge into an EGS system could help support it. Typically, an EGS system we look to develop as a closed loop and only extract heat at the surface through a heat exchanger, rather than directly producing steam from the EGS system and passing the steam through a turbine and then losing part of that fluid with each cycle. We try to retain the fluid in a closed circulation loop through the underground heat exchanger, and then pass it through a surface heat exchanger into a secondary fluid and develop an ORC power plant. So almost exclusively EGS projects are coupled with medium enthalpy ORC generating plants at the surface.
Maybe as an addition question, Mr. Beardsmore, which is the most effective, whether we use duplet or using 2 different well injection and production to extract the heat from dry rock, based on your experience?
We stimulate both the wells, if that was the question. So we drill the production well and hydraulically stimulate the production well, and then use the seismic detection network at the surface to understand where the fractures underground have been enhanced, drill an injection well into that cloud of seismic events, and also stimulate the injection well to improve connectivity for the injection as well. So we stimulate both wells before beginning circulation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Beardsmore. We will go to the next question. Maybe can the committee display? And from Artini Unpad, what kind of fluids injected to the well? It is just water, or there are any specific types of fluids? Maybe it's for injection, not for fracture.
It's typically water, saline water, though, so weighted with salt primarily. There's been some experimentation and modeling of injecting proppants into some systems. There's some debate as to whether proppants are going to be a net advantage or disadvantage, because they will hold the fractures open, but they will also block the permeability to some extent as well. So, but largely it's dominantly just water injected for hydro shearing, but with some salt added, just to weigh the water a bit, make it a bit heavier.
Regarding to the proppant, Mr. Beardsmore, at this technology today, what temperature that the proppant?
Yes, so it's certainly a field of active research, and some of those projects that have been funded through the Utah Forge project have been looking at those the stability of different proppants at those higher temperatures. So it's not something I've actively investigated myself, so I would only be speaking secondhand about what I've read about other experiments. And all I would be really confident saying is it's a field of active research to understand what the long-term impact of high temperature is on those on a range of different proppants. So it's still an unanswered question at the moment. What is likely to be a good proppant to use, and even if proppants are the way to go. So active research still.
Okay, I think we still have 2 minutes, maybe enough for one question again. The committee, please display the next question from Suminar. From Suminar Unpad. What kind of technology is used to enhance the natural fracture? Is there any negative impact caused by the fracture enhancement method? And what are the strategies to lower the risk? Please give your.
So I got the first half of that question. What are the technologies used to enhance the fractures? And it really is hydraulic stimulation. So high pressure water is dominantly the technology used, but the SALAC experiment actually demonstrated that thermal shock actually had a big impact in the early stages of hydraulic stimulation as well, and that's been confirmed through some of the experiments funded through the European Union as well, that the shock of cold water injection into the hot fractures has as great an impact at the early stage of fracture enhancement as the actual high pressure water itself. So as the high pressure water is opening the fracture, the thermal shock of the cold water is also shrinking the rock. It's thermal shrinking of the rock, which is also having an enhancing effect and helping open up the fractures. So it's those combination of both high pressure and low temperature is most effective in the early stages, but with continued stimulation, the effect of the temperature tends to trail off, and then it's really the high pressure has the most effect later on in the stimulation. So not sure if there was a second part to that question, but
can the committee display again the next the second part of this question? What is the negative impact of the fracture, Mr. Beardsmore? Is there any negative impact?
Negative impacts of the fractures. There have been several occasions where rather large seismic events have occurred internationally. So that is definitely the major negative impact of hydraulic stimulation. There's a general consensus, I will say, that if the stimulation program is well designed and operates within established international guidelines, then the risk of induced seismicity is very low, or at least the risk of relatively high magnitudes above 3 or 3.5 magnitude seismicity should be very low for a properly designed stimulation program. But there have been occasions of magnitude 5 events being triggered by EGS, and the most recent being in Pohang in South Korea several years ago, which certainly put an end to the project. The project ceased after that event, and there was actually some damage to buildings and things. So that was a very serious event. So that's, yes, definitely the major risk of hydraulic stimulation. EGS is induced seismicity.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer, Mr. Beardsmore. Unfortunately, our time is up, and I shall end.
Yes, I'll probably go through and type answers to some of these ones in the list as well. So I'll stay online and type some answers. But thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much. And there is a memento for you, Mr. Beardsmore, for sharing with us today. That was a very interesting discussion, and I hope in the future we can discuss again with this topic or the others. Okay, thank you again, Mr. Beardsmore. See you next time.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we end this session, there is any announcement from the committee that the presentation from Mr. Andrew Fleming will be recorded, and the committee will upload it to the YouTube. And then if you need to see the presentation, please go to the our YouTube channel, Geotermal ITB. And this is the last of the third session for today. Thank you very much for still with us, and I hope this discussion will be beneficial for you, and especially for support the development of geothermal in Indonesia and worldwide. Okay, thank you very much, and I will give this event to the Miss Leticia again. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you for all the moderators and speakers for the knowledge you have shared with us today. The memento will be sent to you after the event. According to our clinometer, it rates about approximately 400 participants in Zoom that are live with us from all over the world. While in YouTube, we have more than 250 live streamers. Keep sharing and join with us. We will come back with another interesting event. Now, second day of the series of 11 ITB International Geothermal Workshop is near to end. At this moment, we would like to give our highest gratitude to all invited speakers and moderators. Due to the limitation of time, unfortunately, not all of the questions can be answered during the event. Also, you can watch the replay footage of today's agenda on our official YouTube channel, Geothermal ITB. We also like to say thank you to all participants for staying with us, not only for listening, but also sharing your ideas and thoughts in this event. It's our privilege to acknowledge to all our main sponsors. Our gratitude goes to sponsored by organized by also endorsed by and supported by media partner. And don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel to get an interesting information related to geothermal. We would like to remind you that tomorrow is the last day of our event in the series of virtual 11 ITB International Geothermal Workshop from 1 to 5 p.m. Jakarta time. For tomorrow's agenda, the topic is geothermal update and innovation. You can check the details on the slideshow at the end of today's event. And now we will announce 2 participants that have shared their more interesting Instagram stories. The winners are Taufik Badak and Yahya Maul. Congratulations to all the winners. The committee will contact the winners for further information. We would like to inform you the upcoming geothermal event on September 1 to 5th, the 8th International Geothermal Convention and Exhibition 2022. Please watch the video at the end of today's event. Last but not least, for those who have paid to get the certificate, please check the chat box and fill the participant attendance form. We will send the certificate through you after the event. Eventually, this is the time for us to say goodbye. I'm Leticia, your host for today, hoping to meet you soon. Thank you and stay healthy. See you again tomorrow.
Kesiapan Indonesia menjelang perhelatan konferensi para pihak Conference of Parties ke-26 United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change di Glasgow, Inggris akan memberikan kontribusi terbaik untuk bersama-sama negara-negara di dunia mencapai target upaya pengendalian perubahan iklim global. Indonesia telah meratifikasi keputusan Paris Agreement dengan Undang-Undang 16 tahun 2016 dengan berkomitmen menerapkan Nationally Determined Contribution sekaligus selalu berusaha meraih target tujuan pembangunan berkelanjutan atau Sustainable Development Goals. Strategi Indonesia dalam mencapai NDC dengan kombinasi kerja 2 sektor besar penurunan emisi pada NDC, yaitu sektor hulu atau kehutanan dan sektor energi. Pada sektor energi, pemerintah telah mengarahkan untuk disiapkan peta jalan atau roadmap untuk penurunan emisi dari batu bara dengan pengembangan energi baru dan terbarukan EBT, salah satunya yaitu panas bumi. Energi panas bumi akan menjadi sumber energi yang memiliki peranan penting untuk meminimalisir peran bahan bakar fosil untuk memasok beban dasar bagi generasi listrik. Energi terbarukan sangat dibutuhkan, mengingat perubahan iklim kini tengah terjadi dengan skala yang luar biasa besar. Hal itu pun ditunjukkan dalam pemanfaatannya yang tidak bergantung kepada bahan bakar. Panas bumi juga bersifat ramah lingkungan, serta berperan penting dalam kontribusi pengembangan infrastruktur daerah dan perekonomian di wilayah sekitar, serta peran energi terbarukan sangat penting karena merupakan energi bersih yang dapat mereduksi gas rumah kaca untuk mencapai NDC di tahun 2060. Dalam mencapai target Nationally Determined Contribution NDC, dibutuhkan adanya investasi dan teknologi yang cukup besar serta dukungan kerjasama teknis internasional dan sektor swasta. Pemanfaatan teknologi digital di seluruh sektor termasuk sektor panas bumi menjadi lambang perkembangan panas bumi saat ini, seperti kecerdasan buatan atau IoT, data besar atau big data, komputasi awan atau cloud computing, rangkaian blok atau blockchain, sistem informasi geografis atau Geographic Information System, dan masih banyak teknologi digital lainnya. Kehadiran digitalisasi teknologi dalam sektor pemanfaatan energi bersih menjadikan pengembangan panas bumi menjadi lebih efisien dan diyakini sebagai salah satu faktor pendorong transisi energi terutama dalam menjaga stabilitas sistem kelistrikan dan mengakomodir peningkatan variabel energi bersih. Komitmen Indonesia dalam transisi energi diwujudkan dengan net zero emission di tahun 2060. Indonesia memiliki sumber daya panas bumi 23 gigawatt dari data tahun 2020, dan hingga saat ini pemanfaatan panas bumi untuk pembangkit listrik baru mencapai 2.175,7 megawatt. Dengan total installed capacity geothermal power plant sebesar 2.175 megawatt, akan ikut berkontribusi pengurangan emisi CO2 sebesar 10.875.000 ton per tahun. Dengan demikian, adanya potensi panas bumi yang demikian besar dan dengan availability factor yang sangat tinggi, sangat sesuai untuk menjadi base load green energy dengan potensi mendapatkan carbon credit. Panas bumi mempunyai potensi green economic multiplier effect dengan bisa dihasilkannya green hydrogen dan mineral ekstraksi seperti silika, lithium dari waste brine, waste heat untuk direct use. Sudah selayaknya panas bumi menjadi pilihan utama ketahanan energi nasional serta menjadi andalan IT dalam transisi energi. Saat ini, Indonesia berada di peringkat kedua dari sumber daya dan pemanfaatan panas bumi di dunia, di bawah Amerika Serikat. Pemerintah menargetkan Indonesia menjadi pengguna nomor 1 panas bumi di dunia dalam beberapa tahun ke depan. Sehingga hal ini menunjukkan bahwa transisi energi itu bukan solusi. Transisi energi harus dilakukan dalam menjawab tantangan ketahanan dan kemandirian energi nasional. Untuk dapat mencapai tujuan yang sudah ditetapkan, dibutuhkan sinergitas stakeholder maupun institusi terkait dalam pembangunan. Dukungan demi dukungan akan sangat dibutuhkan untuk terus menggali potensi panas bumi di Indonesia. Dengan seluruh manfaat yang dihadirkan oleh pengembangan panas bumi, harapannya panas bumi dapat dioptimalkan untuk kesejahteraan rakyat Indonesia. Tidak ada alasan untuk menunda pemanfaatan panas bumi di Indonesia tercinta ini.
Cuma rebahan, tapi bisa bikin perubahan. Waktunya mulai bisa apa aja dari satu aplikasi. Mulai adaptasi cara bayar baru.
Bisa, kan pakai kris. Jadi mudah.
Mulai eksplorasi cara tarik tunai baru.
Ya bisa lah. Dengan mobile tunai, gak perlu ribet.
Mulai melihat potensi bisnis baru.
Bisa dong. Transfer luar negeri cukup dari sini.
Oh, itu aja ya?
Enggak lah. BNI Mobile Banking punya banyak fitur yang buat kamu bisa apa aja. Bisa investasi, buat live goals, kirim digital kado,
bayar tagihan rutin, top up e-wallet,
dan berbagai fitur untuk transaksi lainnya. Aku aja punya BNI Plus dan BNI Mobile Banking.
Yuk, buka tabungan dan aktivasi sekarang.
Cukup selfie.
Dengan tampilan BNI Mobile Banking baru,
mulai bisa apa aja sekarang.
In geothermal field operation, reservoir analysis and steam supply forecast are conducted with a high amount of data. Engineers spend most of their time to check and prepare the data. They have a very limited time to do analysis for decision making. How to solve this problem? In ILEMA we offer solution. Introducing to you, GeoX. What exactly is GeoX? How can it empower you? GeoX is an intelligent robot that's designed for geothermal power generation early warning system. GeoX can boost your organization productivity and maintain your steam field sustainability. through an enhanced real-time surveillance on reservoir and surface facility performances. GEM is embedded artificial intelligence with machine learning solutions, enables continuous abnormal behaviors monitoring, proactive potential losses mitigation, and early operational process optimization. With a cloud computing-based system, GeoGen is very flexible for you to access anywhere, anytime, with any devices. It allows big data analytics in a secure and collaborative environment. GeoGen provides high-quality services to assist your organization in driving operational excellence, lower risks, optimized costs, and higher revenues in the operation stage.